Hello, so I'm gonna be making some bread today. Yay! So I'll be using a recipe from a cookbook called The Art of Escapism Cooking by Mandy Lee from the food blog Lady and Pups, one of my favorite food blogs. So this loaf looks really good, super crusty. Let me show you a picture of it. That's what it looks like, gorgeous. And what's really nice about this one is you get that kind of crusty loaf, kind of like a sourdough, but it doesn't actually use sourdough. And so she has all these really cool shortcuts to get that like tangy flavor without having to go through all the fuss of keeping a sourdough starter. So I'm excited. First up, you're gonna need flour, water, a bit of plain yogurt, and then roasted barley tea powder. I actually don't have roasted barley tea powder, but I found this in the pantry and it looked kind of like the roasted barley. And my mom said it's just another type of like Korean tea, and I tasted one of the grains and it has that like toasted flavor. So I just ground this up and used it in place of that. So the first step is actually something called autolysis, which is where you only mix the flour and the wet ingredients before you add the yeast, so that you can kind of like kickstart the gluten formation, and it basically makes things sort of like easier to mix afterwards, and also improves the flavor of the dough. So that's what we'll do now. So first up, I'm going to mix the yogurt and the water together. So just pour that in, and then I have the water. Just give that a little mix first. Then I'm gonna add the flour. Then I have the tea powder. Just give that all a good mix. Okay, so here's what the dough looks like after mixing. So it should look like sticky and lumpy like that. So the autolysis can last anywhere from at least 30 minutes to up to 10 hours. And the longer you go, like the better the flavor should be. But since I want to bake it tomorrow morning, I'm just gonna do probably like a 4 or 5 hour autolysis process. So we'll just let it cover and we'll be back in a couple hours. So it's about 4 hours later. The dough was sitting and it's definitely become a lot looser and more relaxed. And so now we're gonna add the yeast. So I have 1/3 teaspoon of yeast here with some warm water that's just warm to the touch. Just gonna dissolve this. So let that sit. It's already kind of like bubbling a bit. So that's good. And then we're gonna add some salt. So salt can kill yeast, so always add it separately. I'm just gonna start mixing in the salt first. It's pretty much all mixed now, so I'm just gonna let it sit for another 30 minutes before we do the folding. Okay, so it's now 4:45, 30 minutes later. The dough looks like that. So we're gonna do our first set of folds. So I have some olives I need to get rid of, so I'm gonna add these a bit at a time. Okay, and so we're gonna let it sit for another 30 minutes and then we'll do our next set of folds. So it's now 5:20, time for the second round of folds. So we're going to rest for another 30 minutes and then do the last round of folds. It's about 6 o'clock now, time to do the last set of folds. It looks a lot poofier, smoother than what it started as. So cool. Okay, so I'm going to see if it's ready by just taking like pinch of the dough, and then if you could form a window. So I don't think it's quite there because I can't stretch it out until it's transparent. So I'm just gonna do some more folds. Okay, so I'll wait another like 20 minutes and then see if it's ready. Another 20 minutes have passed. So now we're gonna do the first rise, so like 4 to 6 hours at room temperature. 3 hours later, she's tripled. So crazy. Thought the other side was always green. There isn't any color in my dreams. When you ask me if I'm okay, I don't have a lot to say. Can't tell you something I do not know. Maybe just hold me, just hold me. I'm coming back slowly, so slowly. And you ask if I'm always this lonely. How can I tell you something I do not know? Now we're gonna cover this and let it rise overnight in the fridge. It's about 7:20. As you can tell, it's very early in the morning. I'll start preheating the oven now. This will be at 500 degrees. Basically the highest you can go. Oh my goodness. I'm in convection mode. Then I'll put the pot in the oven. Okay, so it's almost at the 45-minute mark. I'm gonna take the dough out of the fridge and see what it looks like, and then we'll get it ready to go into the oven. Okay. Let's take a look. Oh, wow. Okay, so apparently it's only supposed to expand by 50%. I think it kind of doubled, so it might have been too warm when I put it in the fridge, or I might have overproofed it the first time around, but we'll see how this turns out. What we're gonna do is gently invert the bowl so the dough comes out. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. I'm gonna score this so that it puffs up. A razor blade works better probably, but I don't have a razor, so I'm just gonna use a sharp knife. So now I'm gonna take the pot out of our oven and then put the dough in. stir this up. And then back into our oven. So it's been about like 24-25 minutes. So now I'm just gonna take off the lid and then bake it for another like 12 to 15 minutes. Okay, so I just got a little sneak peek at what it looks like, and it looks good. It puffed up. It was really flat when I put it in the pot, so I didn't think it would rise that much, but it really poofed.
별로 안 될 걸, 로이스? 너무 뜨거울 걸?
와우.
완전 비주얼 완전 깡패.
Oh my god. Can you hear that crust? She's beautiful. Time to cut in. One. Taste test.
맛있어.
It's another morning, and I feel like I really didn't share my thoughts on the bread. I'm really happy with how it came out, and I think it's so cool how Mandy Lee uses like yogurt and the roasted tea powder to get this really cool flavor without having to use like a sourdough starter or any like crazy whole wheat flours that can affect the texture of the dough. And it's like super soft. It was even softer on the same day. And it has like a nice openness to it, but it's also really chewy. So it's honestly amazing just eating it by itself. We made this pear jam last week. That's so good because the pears were like super ripe. So I've been putting a little bit of this, some homemade pesto. So it's not in the most pretty container, but it's really good. And it's such a good combination. The girl is Korean, so I love my sweet and salty. So good. Highly recommend checking out the Art of Escapism Cooking by Mandy Lee and giving this bread a try.